Welcome to Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast, where we explore the intersection of AI and creativity with your hosts, Rob and Jason.
Welcome to Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast, where we explore the fusion between AI and creativity. My name's Rob. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Jason, your other host.
Yeah, we're going to dive into this inaugural episode, and we're going to give you an overview of what you're listening to and why we're doing this. But first, Jason, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it?
It has been. I think we've been talking about it for, maybe a year. And we started doing some work in December. And here we are in our very first episode, which is pretty exciting, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm stoked. So what's going on in your world of creativity and AI this week?
Well, I have been trying to wrestle Legos into the format that I need them to be without real Legos, but AI, and finding that to be all sorts of challenging in my world. But that's the project on the docket for the moment. How about you?
Fun. Yeah, I've been doing some traditional art this week. I'm doing some 3D rendering and stuff like that, but looking forward to getting back into some image models. I've been exploring the amazing stuff that the Flux image model can do lately and trying to figure out new workflows for that. You know me, I like to stretch the limits and push things till they break. So that's what I've been doing in my spare time.
You do. I really love the most recent experiment that you've done, just showing what all the settings do and how far you can push it, which I'm sure our listeners will someday have an opportunity to check out. But Rob, I thought it might be helpful.
Drop that on our Instagram or something.
Yeah, there you go. Drop into the Instagram. You're always thinking like a marketer. That's good. I thought it might be helpful for our listeners to know why we started a podcast. So what are we doing here, Rob? Who is this audience that we are trying to reach with the Fuse podcast?
Yeah, I feel like, man, there's so many AI podcasts out there. And I think that's one of the reasons we keep this thing around so long is that it's like, what sort of new voice can we add to the mix? There's the news podcasts that need to drop the latest thing the moment it comes out and hype it up, the tutorial how-to folks. And I think there's a big, ginormous conversation that has been missed. And that's kind of what we're exploring in the fusion of AI and creativity. You know, there's business, there's news, there's all sorts of stuff, lots of questions, lots of pushback, lots of ways to grow and explore these technologies in a creative space. So that's what I'm bringing to the table. And for you, what was it?
Well, I mean, it's definitely along those lines. I think AI is incredible in so many areas, you know, analyzing statistics and coming up with better funnels and all the stuff that people are using it for business. Both of us are creative guys. We've been doing things with image and animation and graphic design and all of that. And so, you know, I had an initial fear of what AI could do or how it might create challenges or replace people who do the kind of things we do. My aha has been that it's just another tool in the toolbox. I have been excited to explore how to use this. I have done so many projects with AI that have allowed me to do things better, faster, and even to do things that I might not have been able to do with traditional tools. So it's going to be an exciting conversation about how do we do creativity, but enhance that creativity and use these tools with AI technology. So that's exciting to me.
Yeah, and you've alluded to us both being in the creative space, so maybe it's a good idea to introduce ourselves to the audience so they know who we are and what we're bringing to the table personally, professionally, and then in the AI space. Maybe give us your background, where you come from, how you got here, and then I'll share a little bit about where I'm coming from as well.
Well, I'm a lifelong artist. I figured out in about third grade that I was going to be an artist when I grew up. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but my dream was to be an artist, maybe go work in Hollywood or whatever. I went to art school, graduated top of my class, then got involved at a large mega church as the graphic artist and really found a passion for telling the stories of the gospel through image. And I am still involved in sort of the secular world. But I have always had an interest in using technology to communicate messages as clearly and as compellingly and creatively as possible. So AI is just the next stepping stone in that journey. I've been using it a lot in my creative work and even just to have some fun. There's some fun things you can do with AI as well, as you know.
Yeah, I feel like both of us have this play first, work second attitude. We find a fun toy, we figure out all the ways to use it to entertain ourselves, and then we figure out ways to apply it to a professional workflow and actually get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes that fun, actually, you're doing something just for kicks to make your friends smile or whatever. And then you end up finding, hey, there's a job. That very thing that I did for fun can factor into it. So it's helpful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of learning through play.
Yes.
And you'll hear that through this podcast too. We've got all sorts of things that at least entertain us coming up, and hopefully they'll entertain our audience as well. So yeah, let me give you a little bit of where I'm coming from, listener at home. I kind of walk a similar journey to Jason in a lot of ways, but then also have a unique path because we're all individuals here. My background is in creative spaces since I was a kid. However, I did not dream of being an artist when I grew up. Instead, I dreamed of being an astronaut. And here we are having a podcast about AI. So one of us is living our childhood dream. The other one is finding it as we go. My creative background is, currently working as a creative director at a large church in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. Prior to that, owned a marketing agency. I've been in the web development space and all sorts of other spaces. But for me, like the technical side of things has always been a means to an end, and that end is creating something cool. Like if I could define my entire career arc, it's been like, I want to make cool stuff and I want to share it with people, no matter what that tool is. I'm a photographer by trade. I produce video by trade. I'm a 3D artist, kind of work all these different tools in. And just like you said, AI is another tool in the toolbox. And I think that's going to be a theme that you're going to hear throughout this podcast.
Part of what drew me to doing a podcast with you is that you have both that creative side and also a very fascinating brain around the left brain side. Like you get the stuff under the guts. The combination of our two experiences, and I'm more right brained and focused on just sort of the, how do I make it work? And you are on the, I know how to make it work and also have to work it, is what's going to make it interesting to have these conversations.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll be valuable for you, listener, as well, as we're going through this, so you can hear different perspectives. And Jason, one thing that marks our relationship is we like to disagree on stuff too. We both have strong opinions, which is a good thing because neither of us are ever right, and there's always different perspectives. So challenging our preconceptions and perspectives is one thing that we want to do here.
What might the audience take out of what we're doing? Well, as you said, we're not going to be the latest news, although sometimes we might talk about latest news. We're not going to do all the tutorials, although sometimes we are going to maybe show you how to do a thing or two, might have some bonus sessions and stuff like that. But we really want to create usable, relevant information about the tools to help you do cool stuff better and faster. So we want to expose you to some great things and maybe even how we're using them in our own workflows.
I think one of the things that was missing from the overall conversation right now too is the more philosophical stuff, like the questions of what are the limits of what AI can do from a creative standpoint, and what's the interplay between human artistry and then AI assisted tools. We were just sharing some articles from the U.S. Copyright Office this week about the implications of AI in the workflow and what that means for copywriting our work. So really, I think that whether you are a technical person or whether you're just a pure artist or you're just interested in the idea of creativity in general, and you wouldn't even consider yourself an artist, though I think you probably are, we want to open conversations that we think haven't really been had in this space and provoke some thought. So hopefully this is going to be something that's interesting to you to chew on. And, I feel like we could build an audience of 100,000 people overnight if we just went the news route, the tutorial route, whatever. But I would rather dive in slow, find the folks that are really interested in chewing on these things and thinking critically through these things. And that's going to be the ideal listener. So if that's you listening at home, you're going to love this podcast. If you just want the fast, quick hits, find us on Instagram. Obviously, we're going to post small stuff there, but this longer form content is going to be really diving in.
Rob, are you saying that we're not going to give them the one prompt to rule them all that will help them make $150,000 a month on YouTube? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If I ever find it, I might share. Well, no. If I ever find it, I'm not going to share it with you. But it's also like the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus. It's a fun story, but I don't think that the one prompt to rule them all will ever exist.
A lot of people are propped up on that concept, though, that just becoming the most incredible prompt engineer will do it all for you. The other thing I think it's worth noting about our conversations is that there are a lot of very strong feelings about artificial intelligence in the world around us, and especially with creatives that I encounter. In addition to the other work I do, I teach part-time for a design college, and there's a lot of debate there around whether AI is artistry and if you can consider it real art. And I think those things will enter our conversation as well. So if you're curious about or want to be a part of that conversation, I think we're going to have a lot to offer there as well.
Yeah. And even if you think that AI is the worst thing in the world, hopefully we will have a sober perspective of how we approach it. We want to challenge the anti-AI crowd as well, but we are unashamedly pro using AI in a workflow. But Jason, you've got a phrase that you use all the time about doing it.
Well, I believe AI should be a do it with you, not a do it for you. There are certain things that it can do for you. My mantra when I think about AI is to embrace the tools, but also exercise restraint. Just because you can do something with AI doesn't mean that you necessarily should. And there are some ethical lines that we've had a lot of conversation about. And I think a lot of times we're in agreement, but we even sometimes find ourselves having some debate around ethical concerns and all of those things. So that is something I think every listener of this podcast probably ought to wrestle with a little bit. And hopefully we can help guide you to some interesting conclusions.
Indeed. So thinking about the folks that we have in our heads, imagining who's listening to this podcast, we want this to be for creative directors. We want this to be for graphic designers. We want this to be for programmers. We want this to be for anybody who views what they do as creativity or art. Hopefully everybody realizes that they are creative in some way, but specifically kind of narrowing it down to some of the core disciplines. For those folks, take the creative director or the graphic designer. Why should they care about AI in the first place? They're doing things just fine right now. Why should they care?
Every artist I've ever encountered wants to do the best work they possibly can. And they want to create something that means something to people, that stops the scroll, so to speak, as we think about telling stories. And one of the things that AI is really good at is helping you to kind of level up your work. It'll allow you to do things that maybe you don't know how to do. So like I've experimented with stop motion animation using AI, which is not something I typically have the time to do or even the skill set necessarily to do. Both of us, Rob, have played a lot with music generation. And the fact that you can hum a tune or play a few chords and turn it into a fully orchestrated song, it can allow you to bring some of the dreams that maybe you've had in your head that you don't have the skill sets to execute. You can allow those things to happen, or those things can happen through AI. Those are reasons that you're going to want to listen. We will kind of walk you through some of our own test cases and, our successes and maybe even some of our failures with this technology as well.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of fails because AI tends to have a lot of fails, and they tend to be either entertaining or terrifying. But on the side of you kind of using AI in a workflow, you mentioned things like music generation and stuff like that. I think that one of the things that I want to hone in on is looking at the ways to use them in a tool in a workflow such that as a human, we're driving the creative ship, right? So like there's, I think, a right way and a wrong way to use AI. The wrong way is to go type prompt, get thing, publish, which you can do that and you can produce things that look nice, sound nice, what have you. But I think that's the least form of generation of things. I'm not even going to call that art particularly, which is probably a conversation we'll have in a different episode. But, we were just looking at that Copyright Office published their guidelines for January 2025. This is where we're heading with the conversation around AI and copyright. One of the things that they drive home there too is like, if you use AI as a tool in the process, that's human creativity. Even just on the legal perspective, exploring like what constitutes human creativity. And admittedly, they're like, it's a really low bar, but click button, publish thing is not it. There has to be some sort of, arrangement of things that the human element is there. And so really exploring and encouraging I think a part of just learning how to use the tools is the click button get thing. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity to say like, hey, with a little shift of perspective and learning how to use these tools in tandem with each other, you can go from, oh boy, that's nice, you clicked a button, you got a thing, to wow, you actually turn that into something meaningful. Like a prime case that I have at the top of my mind is just this morning, I found out that an AI short film that I had produced and entered into a film competition got an honorable mention in the narrative category. That was a piece that I had a vision for. We'll put it on our Instagram. You can see the whole thing, and we'll talk about it in a future episode, I'm sure. But it was a short film that I had a vision for. And ordinarily, even though I'm a videographer and I could technically go out and it was set on a Norwegian fjord, and it was an old man's story reflecting on his youth, and I could go out and shoot that. I could produce that. I did like 90% of it while I was laying in bed at 2:00 in the morning on my phone, because now that we've got these tools, we can take that vision that we have in our head and unlock things that ordinarily we wouldn't be able to do. And that's the kind of thinking that I want to encourage as we go through this.
Absolutely. And that was a pretty incredible film that you put together. Definitely go check it out, friends. It'll inspire you to do new things. And even doing things that are technical in a sense. I had a high school reunion last year that I coded an entire trivia game from the 90s from when I graduated. And I don't know a thing about code, but I had sound effects and scoring systems and musical cues. It's just incredible to have an idea and partner with these tools. That's the different mentality I think we bring to think about collaborating with artificial intelligence to create something instead of here's a command or a query, do a thing for me. And I think we're going to try and break that thinking a bit, that the more you bring of yourself to it, the better the outputs are. We've all been to those blockbuster movies that are about special effects and eating popcorn. In my view, the best movies are the ones that have a great story and then support that story. Some of the generative AI tools that are out there right now do silly little things where you can take someone's picture and then turn them into Play-Doh and you see somebody mashing them up with their fingers. I hope the future of AI is not just click a button, do a thing with someone's photo, but that we think about how can we tell meaningful stories. I think a lot of our conversation is going to revolve around kind of creativity with a purpose and using the tools to execute that creativity, that purpose.
Yeah, I think in that conversation too, we break down some of the misconceptions and hesitations that might come along with AI. Things like, I don't want to use AI because it's just a copyright infringement machine, or it's just cheap art. It's not real art. The more we dive into those things and open that conversation, I think it benefits the AI landscape as a whole, but then also creatives as a whole.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you, Rob. I guess I'll just say real quick for our listeners, we have a friendship forged out of artificial intelligence and our mutual experiments. We continue to experiment together. And I hope that as we do this podcast, we'll even have an opportunity to experiment with listeners out there that are sharing their own new learnings and experiments and tools they encounter.
Yeah, let's kind of like start to land this plane and really like explore what's going to make this podcast unique. Why would you want to listen to this thing over one of the news things? What's the unique bent that we're bringing to the table here?
Well, I hope that we're pretty fun. So I think there's going to be some entertainment value here. I really like that we have different skill sets with some overlap. I would like to think for our viewers or for our listeners, you've just got such incredible stuff in your brain. I hope that in our conversations, I can sort of be a proxy for those folks that want to understand some of the deep level, like how does this stuff work under the hood? And my passion is always kind of boiling things down to the simplest explanation so that it's really accessible for anybody. And I think our combination of skill sets is going to make for an interesting way of exploring what AI can do and how to use these tools.
Yeah, and I think it's worth shouting out here too, our invisible companion that you don't see right now, and that's our producer, Liz, who's always behind the scenes, keeping us on track. And I think she brings a good perspective to the table too, of being that voice of like, she's just learning all these tools and super interested in how to apply them in creativity and business and personal development. Having her voice in there, I think is going to be really critical as well.
I think another thing that will be unique about what we do is that a lot of times on the podcasts or the influencers that I follow, they get really specific about a certain tool or maybe one or two tools. I think you and I both use a bunch of different tools and we use them together. So the mix of the tool set that we bring together, I think, is really valuable. And we're going to guide you through how you use those things for storytelling and all of that. We both also are pretty regular speakers and trainers. I do a lot of consultation work. So I think that we're going to offer some thought leadership. We're going to get you to think about things a little differently. For me, it's really important to underpin all of what we're doing with purpose and intention. I mean, it's okay to just go have some fun too, but what are your foundational principles that guide your use of AI and why you choose this tool or that tool, this particular project or that project, or what are the boundaries that we need to set so that we can thrive in our creativity, but also stay in a good ethical place as we're creating new things with this rapidly changing technology?
Yeah. So if you're in the creative space and you are just thinking through, all right, this whole AI stuff, how do I use it technically? How do I use it strategically? How do I use it morally, ethically? I really hope that you'll hang on with us, listen to these coming episodes, and be a part of the conversation too. It's not just the two of us having a conversation, you're part of it. And we want to hear your thoughts and what's important to you and how you're processing all of these things as well. As we land this plane, Jason, how can listeners do that? How can they engage with us throughout the week? How can they connect with us? How can they leave us feedback?
Well, we have a website set up at AIcreativepodcast.com, and you can find us there. We have Instagram. Rob, what's the Instagram? Where they can find us there?
That's a great question. I think it's AI Creative Podcast, but I'm not 100% sure right now. We'll put that in the show notes.
You'll find both of us on social media. We'll be interacting there as well. We're pretty accessible guys, and we're always happy to help when we can. There you go.
Yeah. So let's land this plane. If you have any thoughts or questions, find us at AI Creative Podcast on the Instagram, on the website, or individually on social media. Be sure to subscribe. This is episode number 1. If you are even remotely interested in this, just hit that subscribe button right now. Leave us a rating right now because it's going to be huge in getting this podcast off the ground and getting some listenership. Also, share this podcast with someone that you think would benefit from being a part of this conversation. So that's all that we've got for Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast this week. Hope to catch you next week as we dive into our first real episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Fuse, the AI Creative Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, it would mean a lot to us if you'd smash that subscribe button, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. If you'd like to connect with us or follow along with projects we're working on, find us on Instagram at AI Creative Podcast or at AIcreativepodcast.com.